I have covered Bioshock 1, 2 and now Infinite. This is the final chapter in my series of Bioshock retrospectives, and after playing Bioshock Infinite and the rest of the series, I've now found out which game is my favourite, and that game is Bioshock Infinite.
Is a better home awaiting in the sky, in the sky.
Going from the disgusting and disturbing city of Rapture to then flying up to Colombia, the city high in the sky, it's a very different change of scenery. Much like the many changes that Bioshock has taken in Bioshock Infinite compared to its predecessors. In Bioshock Infinite, you certainly go for a more cinematic, action-packed run-and-gun experience compared to the more reserved experience that you would get in Bioshock 1 and 2. And with this more cinematic approach, the game feels more like an interactive movie than any other of the games. It's quite an amazing experience. There are various set pieces that allow you to feel fully immersed in the game. There are lacking amounts of set pieces in Bioshock 1 and 2, but in Bioshock Infinite it's at the forefront of the game. Also with traversal, the skyhook really adds a new dimension to it, allowing you to travel to new heights to take out snipers and various other enemies. This addition to traversal allows the game to feel a lot more free when you're in combat and just exploring the world in general. This makes sure that the gameplay always feels fresh and right to the point. There is never a point in a combat scenario where you're just standing still using one gun because you know that it will take out a horde of enemies. No, in Bioshock Infinite it encourages you to traverse and meet your enemies face to face while using various assaults or weapons to take them out. Using the skyhook is one of the most fun things you can do in Bioshock Infinite, using it to grind on rails to get to your next objective. But no pun intended here, it sort of makes the game feel on the rails. You're always going in a specific direction, unlike with Bioshock 1 and 2, which encourages more free roaming aspects in the world. Bioshock Infinite offered a more linear experience to the entire game, and I'm fine with that. I really enjoyed it personally. Unlike in Bioshock 1 and 2, where I would often get lost in the environment and therefore have to use the navigation button to show me where to go. Whereas in Bioshock Infinite, the entire world and the environment are guiding you where to go. Subliminally, there is always a path to take, and it's just hinting to you where to go. Whereas in Bioshock 1 and 2, there are always branching paths going left or right, whereas Bioshock Infinite usually only has one path to go, with the other being gated off, implying that you could have gone that way, but sadly it's been broken off and you have to go this specific way. The linearity also helped with the story, as I never felt like I was at a brick wall in a story because I couldn't get to a certain location. In Bioshock Infinite, the story is always at a constant pace with however fast you're moving through the world, and that means that you could take it as quickly or as slowly as you would like. This meant that I was always engaged in the story. There was never a moment where I was starved for story context or content in general. Maybe this was helped due to having a voiced protagonist and a companion, but either way, the linearity of the game really did help to the storytelling and keeping the player constantly engaged and entrapped in that story. Elizabeth is one of the main reasons for the linearity in Bioshock Infinite, as unlike in Bioshock 1 and Bioshock 2, you now have a companion guiding you where to go. And it can almost come across as a handheld experience as you're being dragged slowly through the game. And it's fine because it's more Elizabeth's story than yours in the game, and you're just guiding her through her goals. Now, just because the game is a linear story doesn't mean that the story is necessarily linear, as with Elizabeth, she is guiding you through dimension hopping as you travel to new dimensions of Colombia. And Colombia, for those who are uninformed, is the environment that we are currently playing in Bioshock Infinite. The dimension hopping also plays into the aesthetic of the game, as from the start of the game you enter Colombia, a city in the sky with a beautiful 1912s inspired city, as well as some beautiful architecture, some old time talking, and also sadly some racial undertones and themes that are sprinkled in. After first entering Colombia, I can guarantee that I stayed in that starting area for around half an hour. I had one of the most beautiful moments in the game, and perhaps even in my entirety of my time playing games. When I was standing there and I heard the Barbershop Quartet. This is one of the most famous moments in Bioshock Infinite. They were singing God Only Knows by the Beach Boys, and although it wasn't actually written in the time period, because the Beach Boys obviously weren't writing God Only Knows in 1912, but Albert Fink is the one who actually claims to have written the song in the game, and later on in the story you find out that he's been using a tear to steal music from the future and give it a 1912 twist on it.
I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you. Without you. Without you.
This is one of the most amazing things, as they actually explain the types of things that I had questions about. It was quite an amazing experience though, just to stand there and watch this Barbershop Quartet. I stood in awe watching that Barbershop Quartet sing God Only Knows. I was watching the NPCs dance and watched them as they sang their amazing rendition of the Beach Boys classic. And after they finished their song, I happily walked away with a smile on my face and continued with the rest of the introduction. I played various fair games and then explored the rest of the environment before coming across Elizabeth after finding her being trapped inside of a giant statue. When you finally release her, as she didn't know that she was being spied upon this entire time, you eventually try to get out of Colombia and head to Paris. Unfortunately though, you have to swap dimensions and you end up in a war-torn iteration of Colombia, where in this universe, the protagonist, as in you, are dead. But the real objective isn't just to go to Paris or anything like that, it's in fact to kill Comstock, also known as the Prophet. In this dimension, poverty is everywhere. People are scavenging for food and will kill anyone to just get a single bite from an apple. This is one of the most heartbreaking moments in the game, as you see children busking just to get a little bit of money to buy something to eat.
In my name, oh Lord of me, didn't I shake sugar? Everything I got is done in palm. Everything I got is done in palm.
People are lounging around too tired to get up and go out and try and scavenge for that final bit of food. Instead, they are lying there, sick, dying, or hungry, waiting for death to take them. The colour palette of these two dimensions changes quite drastically. We go from gold and blue in the first version of Colombia that you enter, and then have black and red be the predominant colours in this war-torn dimension. After you find Comstock and kill him, Booker and Elizabeth eventually have to use the Songbird to take down the rest of Comstock's men. And it's this final sequence that is absolutely amazing. It's more of a horde mode than anything else, but it encourages you to try out every single weapon in the entire game, as unlike in Bioshock 1 and 2, you can only pick up 2 weapons at a time, unlike the weapon wheels in the other game. This final section is very powerful as you see Zeppelins crash down beside you whilst you use Songbird to take them down. It's a very amazing moment, and in this horde section, you never find yourself just lounging about killing one enemy at a time. You have to gather multiple enemies and perhaps use a rocket launcher to blow them all up. It's quite an amazing moment in the final parts of the game. After having the final section of the game where it is revealed that you are Comstock, which I did already know when going into the game, as I have previously seen lists about the top 10 endings or the top 10 worst endings, and obviously the impact wasn't as great for me knowing that Comstock was you all along, but from a different dimension. But the revelation is still quite impactful even if you know what is about to happen. It's very beautiful and cinematic how multiple Elizabeths from different universes come down and, well, drown you. The music that is being played is very somber but very beautiful at the same time. You are put in the exact same place you were towards the beginning of the game. You are being baptized, but also being killed at the same time to ensure that a different version of Elizabeth doesn't have to go through the same thing over and over again. Bioshock Infinite was definitely catered to this more linear experience, and I feel like that was the best option to go for since the narrative in Bioshock Infinite is a lot more complex than in 1 and 2, especially in the DLC. Bioshock Infinite offers a fantastic experience and the story and characters are absolutely fantastic. Bioshock Infinite is certainly my favourite game in the series because it has such an important story to the franchise, but also having voiced protagonists and voiced side characters allowed me to connect with the game and the world in a different way compared to Bioshock 1 and 2. As in Bioshock 1 you didn't say anything at all, and as Delta in Bioshock 2 you just had grunts occasionally. In Bioshock Infinite, having Booker DeWitt as a main protagonist was a great choice, and then later on having Elizabeth being the main protagonist in the Buried at Sea DLC. I really loved the fact that Bioshock Infinite took some risks and allowed the gameplay to evolve from what it did in Bioshock 1 and 2. I hope that we do get to see another Bioshock game, and of course there's always rumours that another game is coming out and it's going to be in 5 years time, but we'll just have to wait and see. After playing all of the Bioshock games and experiencing what I never got to experience on my previous gen consoles, I have been thoroughly surprised. I went into the games just expecting a standard shooter, but instead I got something different. I got something that changed the way I think about video games and the way that they can approach a narrative and not necessarily have to do it in such a linear fashion. The Bioshock franchise is certainly up there with one of my favourite gaming franchises that I have ever played. And because they have now been placed so highly in my favourite gaming series, I just can't wait for another entry. There is rumour that the next one is either going to be in space, perhaps more like Prey, or under the Earth's crust, which will also be very interesting. I guess we're just going to have to wait for a few years till we see a new development in the Bioshock franchise. But Bioshock Infinite will always be my personal favourite Bioshock game. It gave me a feeling like I never had with the other 2 Bioshock games. That connection was never always there in Bioshock 1 and 2, but by the end of Bioshock Infinite, I felt empty, I wanted more. and I got more in the DLC, which was okay to say the least. But Bioshock Infinite just felt like a flash. It went so quickly and left me wanting more. And I guess now I'm just gonna have to wait till a new entry in the Bioshock series arises. Or perhaps find a game that is similar to Bioshock. But overall, Bioshock Infinite is one of my favourite games of all time, meaning that it will always hold a place in my heart. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you did enjoy, perhaps go back and watch the rest of the Bioshock retrospectives. If it wasn't for you, this YouTube channel wouldn't be a thing, so thank you personally from me. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy, then subscribe and turn on that notification button so you don't miss another upload from me. So thank you, and goodbye.